And good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for coming to this talk about MagID. I hope you are still very alert after some really good talks and insights so far, and hope you're not too tired because my presentation is going to require you to think a little bit. I will tell you a little bit about Inspectron first, who we are and what we do. And also to say we have very recently come public with the work we've done on MagID. This is extremely new. Moreover, we've also done a complete brand refresh very recently. These are really exciting times for Inspectron, and I'm very pleased that we can share it with you. So let me have a look here. So to start with, oh, there you go. Why is what I'm going to tell you important for you? Well, firstly, you'll be very aware that market diversion and counterfeiting of products is a colossal and a fast-growing problem. So quick headline numbers are that the sales of counterfeit and pirated goods is valued at around $2 trillion a year. 2 trillion, that is 2,000 billion US dollars per year, and that's forecast to grow to about 2.8 trillion in a couple of years. This impacts people. It impacts commerce and governments, and it touches many market segments. We're all familiar with counterfeited products of luxury brands, but others are just dangerous to people's health and safety. You think of pharmaceuticals, cosmetics, been mentioned before, foodstuff, baby toys, car parts, you name it, there's a counterfeit version of it. Some of them seem benign, like hairbrushes or sandals or yoga mats, but it costs brands a lot of money and it threatens the trust people have in brands. So it also affects large businesses, but very much also small and medium-sized businesses. So one way to combat this is to mark every item, preferably covertly, preferably uniquely serialized. And many solutions exist for this, each with their own advantages and disadvantages. At Inspectron, we've developed a completely new way to covertly and uniquely mark items. This is completely new, and I'm not going to pretend it can solve all the challenges that are out there, but we do think it will enable a much wider access to track and trace. So let me start with some background and get on to the next slide. Who are Inspectron? We are experts for secure printing, and we were founded nearly 50 years ago. We work with global financial institutions and government departments and brands, and we're involved in the production of passports and ID cards, currency, tax stamps and other security printed items, but also in direct mail and in high secure track and trace. So that's what we are. And now for the exciting stuff, the really new thing. What is the innovation? MagID, which has been developed by Inspectron, we hold the patent, with some partners, is a unique technology that uses codes printed in magnetic ink. And we think it's going to revolutionize access to brand protection. It's based on a simple idea, and it's the result of our experience in secure printing. We've combined this experience with state-of-the-art magnetic sensor technology and some of our experience in track and trace. So let me explain the simple idea. How does it work? You may, or if you're not from the UK, you may not be familiar with magnetic ink. It's used to print those funny characters at the bottom of your bank checks. And these characters are used to help sorting the checks because sorting them with magnetic signals used to be definitely more reliable than sorting them optically. Nowadays, both the optical recognition and the reading of the magnetic codes is used, and they get a very good result. So how does this actually work? Here we go, back to school. Magnetic ink contains tiny magnetic particles, like the iron filings that you used in school to learn about magnetism. And the filings align themselves with the field lines of a magnet that's nearby, because each filing in effect becomes a tiny little magnet itself. And it's the field of these combined particles that you can detect, even when you take the big magnet away, like I've just magically done on the screen. So the field lines remain there. Now, the next thing, go back to school, is you may remember that to detect or to feel a magnetic field, you do not need direct line of sight. And by that I mean, you could move the magnet that was lying on top of your table in school when you had a magnet that was below the table. So the field of the magnet simply goes through the table, and it doesn't matter how dense the table is, it will go through it. So now we get to the clever part of our idea. So if you print a simple line pattern using magnetic ink, like in this picture, you only need to detect the on and the off, so the black and the white, and the distances between the lines. The lines, by the way, the lines can have different widths, like EAN or UPC codes, but here I'm showing you just a code that we use. So detecting the on and off and the distances you can do by swiping a reader along the code, like in this fantastically imaginative illustration. And so what you've done then is you have a barcode that you can read even when it is covered up. I'll let you think about that for a moment, because I'm now going to hear your next question. If it is this simple, why has nobody done this before? Right? Why hasn't everything got magnetic codes? And the answer is, to get an accurate reading through materials that are even a fraction thicker than paper, you would need very sensitive magnetic sensors. And then you need to put them inside a reader. So, and this is exactly what we've done. We've developed these sensors and improved them in collaboration with some European partners and supported by a grant from the European Union, well, from the European Commission, to be precise. So let's go back to the innovation, to the idea. We have the codes. I showed you the stripy codes and the readers, but now I'm going to show you how it works on packaging. And because this is a virtual event, I've created a little video so that you can all see it clearly. Can you play that video now? Whoever has the magic wand. So I showed you the code, I'll show you the reader, I'll show you how it works, but how do you manage it? So the final part of the solution is the backend system. And there you manage the codes and you manage the information that's connected to each code, and you see and you analyze the scan data from every scanner. And for this, to develop that backend, we have combined our experience in secure track and trace with our experience in interactive packaging. We've created something we're quite proud of. The platform allows for completely different applications to be used by each customer, because we know every customer has different needs in both the applications themselves, but also in the level of security and level of access that they need. So that means that every customer can create their own applications on our platform, or we can help you with it. So each one is separate, and you don't have to start picking out requirements from a list of options. And if you've already gone down this path, if you've tried these things, you will know what I mean. And for example, if you what we've done and what we're working on as well is an application to scan each individual item, literally each pack, into the stock keeping system, and an app for the same items, for example, that can be used to track items that have been diverted from the intended market, the so-called grey markets. Now, in addition, our platform can use codes other than MagID. So MagID is just a code, a type of tag, but we can use other ones as well. So RFID or NFC. We can use visual codes, 1D or 2D barcodes, but we can do any trigger. For example, digital watermarks, that would work as well. The platform is trigger agnostic, and MagID is just one of them. Now let's go back to MagID actually. MagID is a way to read hidden barcodes. What are the properties? They can be printed on the inside of packaging or under labels. I showed you that in the demo. They can be covered by any non-ferrous material, for example, paper or plastic, or aluminium, paint, or rubber, or you mention it. They're not affected by dirt, or washing, or heating, or cooling, or lamination, also not by magnetic fields nearby. So they're not like the mag stripes on your bank pass. That will not erase them. You can't erase that code. Importantly, we think MagID codes have virtually no environmental impact. They only consist of ink carrying very small magnetic particles. So unlike, for example, NFC, MagID codes don't use inlays, which are often made of PET. They can be made of paper, but often use PET. They don't have an antenna that could contain copper or aluminium, and they don't have a chip which can contain precious metals. It's just ink with very small magnetic particles. MagID codes can currently be read up through about 0.7 of a millimeter, and I tell you what, I'm sure that by the end of this conversation that's gone up already, it's improving very quickly. The readers can be handheld, or they can be included in a card reader, like I'm showing there, or in a production line, in a sorting line. And together with our partners, we're working on static readers as well, as opposed to swiping. How can MagID be used? We think track and trace is a very obvious application for MagID. So being able to hide code in packaging is an ideal way to authenticate items. And they can also be used for track and trace in the supply chain. Another packaging related application we're very much interested in is marking reusable containers for cups or trays or drums, etc. And you're all aware that the extended producer responsibility, or the EPR, places more and more emphasis on producers knowing where their products end up. And we know it's sparking more thinking around reusing packaging in the supply chain. And earlier, just at 2 o'clock, Joe Chidley gave a great presentation about this in the beauty industry. And we think that a low cost, low environmental impact, covert code is sorely needed. Again, I'd like to emphasize that we are not the only solution. A visual and overt code is definitely possible in many situations, but it's not always the answer. There are other applications slightly away from packaging, and I'd be happy to discuss them separately, so ping me if you're interested. But just to emphasize, we are open to inquiries from anybody who has a challenge. So do let us know. We'd love to talk to you. Where are we at? This is a brand new technology. Honestly, it's not. You won't have seen it anywhere else. This is only the second presentation I've given about this so far. It's already been in use in a high-speed automated environment. South Korean Post use it to match content with envelopes for personalized mail that don't use windowed envelopes. And in the packaging sector, we're working on a pilot project here in the UK with a personal care manufacturer and they export currently to 48 different countries. That's increasing, that's expanding very soon. So we're doing a lot of stuff for them, including stock keeping and packing application, but also grey market detection. What is next? We would love to hear from anybody who has a need for track and trace. Low volume, high volume, standard or secure or bespoke or self-service, whatever you need, come and talk to us. We are very interested to hear where you're looking for, whether we can help, and if we can't help with this solution, maybe we can point you in another direction. So I hope you've enjoyed this, and more importantly, I hope it has left you with many questions. So Josh, have you got any questions for us?
Hi, Nathalie. Thank you so much. Thanks. It looks a very exciting new technology, and thank you for sharing it with us. Second, if not first, but but certainly very early in the life cycle, and it's great to be able to share this sort of innovation in this environment. It's very much what we're here to do. And while I'm talking very briefly, once again, I would encourage all of our audience, do go and speak to Inspectron, and of course our other exhibitors who are here in the Discovery Day to go and discover the new and exciting products that are out there. So Nathalie, to talk about MagID, you mentioned you talked a little bit about the markets that you're focusing on. Do you have a sense at the moment? Obviously, it's very new, as to whether you will be looking, I don't know, around the cosmetics or the luxury market, or drinks, or food, or fashion. What are the particular markets that you would see as being your targets?
It's more coarse than that, Josh. For us, packaging, track and trace in packaging is one item, is one application. I said that there's other applications in secure printing, secure documents. There are applications as well in logistics, any kind of logistics, be it just in the warehouse itself, or be it out to the end user. There's applications there too. If you're talking about within packaging, what kind of segments, what kind of markets, I personally, I think pharmaceuticals would be really, really suitable for this. Cosmetics as well. We know there is already quite a bit of track and trace and anti-counterfeit and secure verification being done in the luxury goods market, because
Sure.
if the item itself is expensive, you don't mind paying another 50p for a tag that does that. However, if the item itself becomes far less expensive, it's not £50 but £5, you don't want to spend another 50p on a tag or on a security feature, and then it becomes much more usable, much more possible if you have a very cheap way to run this. So those markets, for the larger sort of cosmetics, pharmaceuticals, yes.
Okay, and in pharmaceuticals, of course, in recent years, I'm probably going back 3 or 4 years now, but there has been a huge increase in serialization in the pharmaceutical market, going down to, I can't remember the name of the legislation, but the legislation that requires every pill almost to have its own serial code. Where would you stand in terms of MagID on serialization, as opposed to simply just adding a barcode to a given product?
Yeah, no, we very much are aiming to be, well, we can do serialization as well. That means it does depend on how big you want the code to be. The physics dictates us that in order to have a larger number of serialized unique codes, so if you are pushing out 1 million packs of biscuits per year that require unique numbering invisibly, the code will be a certain length in MagID. If you
Mm-hmm.
are pushing out 1 billion or 1 trillion of them, the code will be longer. So that does depend on the size of the packaging. But in general, we are very confident that we can meet the requirements depending on the product. Yes.
Okay. And is it, are the codes digitally printed? I mean, is the printing technology yours as well as the ink?
No, neither. They can be.
Oh, okay.
It's interesting. So the ink itself, if you're talking about if you want to print it on paper, is probably standard mica ink. We're even looking at using non-mica ink. Mica is magnetic ink character recognition, so the ink that's used at the bottom of the checks. And you can even buy that in the States off the shelf, because in America you can actually print your own bank checks. So that is standard ink. If you want a serialized code, you will need a printing head or a printing edition that is able to do that. But it's not nothing that no normal printer doesn't have.
Okay. And we've got a question asking about the consumer interaction, if there is any, with MagID. Is there any way for if I've just bought something expensive and I want to check that it's authentic or that
Yep.
it's been through the right supply chain, what is my interaction going to be with that as a consumer? What are the options?
It's a very good question, and we're going, let's say, hot and cold on this. At the moment, you saw the reader in the demonstration. This is one of those readers. The reader head is right inside here. The main body of this is taken up by a battery and by a bit of electronics. We see no reason why this cannot be made so small that it could be put in the inside of a phone, in the corner, maybe the other side of where the camera is, or somewhere there. I cannot see a reason why that wouldn't. Technically, there's no reason for that not to happen. Of course, it would need to be embedded in a phone in order for the general public to be able to read it. We're not going to sell this to each consumer. That's not the point of it. So in the longer, the medium to longer term, I think that's absolutely possible. To be very honest, I still personally, after many years working in this area in a slightly different angle, I still have to be convinced of the consumer's keenness and willingness to interact with packaging. It's there, but it's not as much as the brand would like.
Right. No, fair enough. And thinking about the types of materials that that MagID could be applied to, are there any limits?
I would say the only limit that we can think of is you can't print it on a ferrous material. So if you want to print it on an iron box, on a stainless steel box, that's going to be hard. Everything else is fine. If you can print on it, and there's a lot of stuff you can print on. You can print on glass and on rubber and on leather and on everything, then you can print on it with MagID.
Yeah. Okay. What can you tell us about cost? We have an audience of people who are packaging buyers and who earn their bonuses because they keep within their cost restraints.
A good question. I think the most definitive thing I can say about cost is that we don't have a fixed cost yet. No, it's going to be per code definitely a lot cheaper, of course, than for example, NFC tags, which have a very important place and they're going to be useful in many occasions. But if you want to do them at high volume, it's probably going to be a bit expensive, whereas this is just a printed code. And then on top of that, you will have to, you pay for the back-end system like you would pay with any software as a service in the background, a subscription.
Okay. And in terms of development, what was the biggest challenge? Was it the software? Was it the developing the ink? You mentioned reading through a material as well was a challenge.
I think we're still working on this, Josh. This is definitely super hot off the press, and the sensors are being improved literally every day, every week. We're looking at can we get a better, can we get a more sensitive version? How can we improve the ergonomics of the reader, for example? That's another important thing.
Yeah.
So the aspect of, yes, making a better sensor, that's a challenge. I'd say a bigger challenge is to make sure that it's going to be usable by anybody who needs to use it, and not just by people that have had an hour of training on it. Everybody should be able to pick
Mm.
up the reader and just use it. So that was almost more of a challenge than getting a super sensitive sensor. The fact is that the research institutes are really working hard on that, and that's their expertise. So it was more to us to then see, okay, how can we make the reader as comfortable as possible as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And sort of coming back to thinking about a sales model, if that's the right way to put it. You're talking about software as a service. Is it a sort of pay per click in the way that some printing might be, or are you sort of still working out the model depending
We
on?
are still working out, because we're very aware that it depends on the volumes, Josh. If you have, 100,000 items per year, it's a very different type of need. And there's a lot of small businesses that are looking at those kind of numbers, and still require a way to authenticate their items. But 100,000 is a very small number if you're looking at a big ticket track and trace system. So it's got to be still affordable at that scale as well. On the other hand, our system is completely scalable, and yes, we could do the billions and billions, and it would be a different pricing model. So we're very aware, and we're very keen to make sure that this is a way that small and medium brands also have access to affordable track and trace, because it's going to be everywhere. I mean, that 2 trillion at the beginning, it's a number I can't get my head around. I studied maths for many years. It's enormous, and it's everywhere. So, we want to always make it super easy and super affordable for many items to be marked and authenticatable.
Yeah. Okay. And forgive me if this is a stupid question, but I'm going to ask it anyway, on the basis
Yeah,
that there are no stupid questions.
absolutely.
To come back to basics, what actual information is contained in the barcode? Is it
That's
simply
not
a
a stupid
number?
question. It's a very good question. It is. It is, in fact, a number. It is, in fact,
Okay.
a number, and it's a number that, as soon as I read it, when I automatically read the number in the backend system, in the database, if you want, the massive Excel spreadsheet, I can add a lot of information to that number. And from that moment
Right.
on, when I read it, either I can update that number when I read it, or add information to it, or I just retrieve the information that's there. So it's
Okay.
not a
Okay.
programmable code like, for example, an RFID tag is. That's not what it is.
Okay. Last question, because we're getting close to running out of time. But are there any sustainability or recyclability issues or challenges or opportunities to talk about with regards to MagID?
Opportunities, we think. We think this is just ink with a bit of, literally, to be very crude, with a bit of rust in it. So it's totally, it's extremely environmentally sustainable, environmentally friendly. If it's embedded in plastic and the plastic is ground up, that ground up plastic is completely suitable to be reused for the next plastic bottle. There's no other materials in it.
Great. Okay. Nathalie Muller from Inspectron, thank you so much for joining us and for sharing this exclusive and scoop.
That's all right.
And I wish you every success with the product. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Josh.